Today we're going to start Daf Mem Aleph on the top. It's a new Mishnah. Someone does chalitza. So the case that chalitza would apply would be Reuven is married to Leah, let's say. So Shimon does chalitza. He tells Leah he's not interested in marrying her, so she's free to go. Okay. Now Levi, the third brother, comes along and marries Leah's sister Rachel. Okay, so far so good. There's no problem there. He was allowed to marry Rachel. However, Umeis. Then Levi passed away. So now Shimon, that had already performed chalitza on Leah, Reuven's wife, is now in a position where he needs to do chalitza or yibum on Rachel, which is the sister of a woman that he has already done chalitza on once. So it says, because Leah was considered partially his wife, because he had to do chalitza on her, sort of like divorced her. So you're not allowed to marry the sister of your divorcee. So it's sort of, it has that same prohibition there. It's called achis chalutzase. And so we say that he has to do chalitza again and not yibam. He can't marry Rachel. Okay. Now we have another case. The Gemara is going to challenge the introduction of this case. The way it's introduced is v'chein. And so too, Hamagarishes ishtay v'nasa achiv esachesa. Shimon is, let's say, married to Leah. He divorces her. Okay. And now Levi marries Rachel. Umeis. And Levi passed away. So Shimon that does chalitza, in this case, he doesn't even need to do chalitza. Why? Because this is literally the sister of his wife. Now, he's divorced her already, but it doesn't matter. You can't divorce one sister and then marry the other sister. So Hariza Petura, this is Midairaisa. He's not allowed to marry Rachel. So therefore he's exempt not only from Yibam, but he's exempt from Chalitza. He's exempt entirely. So yeah, if he's the only brother, then she doesn't have to do Chalitza. She's Materis Lashuk, it's called. Okay, now Shemeres Yavam. Here we have this woman, she was married to Reuven, and she's waiting for one of the brothers to do chalitza or yibam on her. She's called the Shemeres Yavam, Leah. Shekidesh achiv esachesa. While she's waiting, so comes along, say Levi, and marries Rachel, her sister. Yeah, that wasn't so nice. She was waiting, and she's a widow. And their sister goes ahead and gets not married, but kiddush, betrothed. Okay. The problem now is that Levi should not have done that because the person that he just married, Rachel, her sister, Leah, had a zika, has an attachment to him. So he's not supposed to marry the sister of someone that's attached to him. He wasn't supposed to do that. So he definitely should not consummate the marriage. He shouldn't finish off this kedushin and nesuin. He shouldn't do the nesuin. He shouldn't do the second part of the marriage, bring her into the house. That he should not do. And Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Amru, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, they said that we tell Levi, Hamtinat shiyaseh achicha ma'aseh. Wait before you consummate the marriage to Rachel, the sister of the Shemeres Yavam. You should wait for your brother Shimon to go ahead and need to do chalitza or yibam on Leah. Once once that's taken care of, then you can finish off and you can marry Rachel. Okay. Yeah, that was supposed to be taken care of first. He didn't take care of Leah, so we tell him to stop in the middle of the marriage, in between the Erisin, the Kedushin, and the Nesuin, until it's taken care of. Chalatz la achiv aikansa. Okay. Let's see, Shimon does chalitza. Then yichnes ishti, then he can marry Rachel. We're missing something here in the Rashi. No, the issue was that we said that we explained it. Okay, Meis Yavam. Let's say Shimon passed away, and now there's no one left to do Yibam or Chalitza on Leah. The only person that's left is Levi. See, Leah was originally married to Reuven. Reuven passed away, so now she's the Shemeres Yavam. She's waiting for one of the brothers to marry her. Shimon would have been great to marry her because Levi had already betrothed Rachel, which is her sister. He cannot marry her. He can't do chalitza on her either in this situation. So what does he do now? Now Shimon passed away. So Yoitzi es ishtei beget. Levi should divorce Rachel. The Eishes achiv bechalitza. And then he should do chalitza on Leah. No, 1 second. Why isn't this different than hamagarishes ishtay nasa achiv es achisa umeis? Why over here do we have to do chalitza at all? He was already married to her. Maybe let's see. Maybe the Gemara will explain that. Okay. We had the first case of the Mishnah was someone that did chalitza, and someone that did chalitza. Shimon does chalitza to Leah, and then Levi marries Rachel, which was totally permissible. Only thing is that Levi now passed away, and now Shimon, that had already done chalitza on Leah, is not allowed to do yibam on Rachel. Then we said the next case was Shimon is married to Leah, he divorces her, and Levi's married to Rachel, and he dies. So now Shimon can't do chalitza or yibam. Shimon doesn't do chalitza or yibam on Rachel. So the Gemara says that the way that second case was introduced, it says v'chein. My v'chein. The Gemara, it's not because the halacha is different. So it's not, and so too, it's a different halacha. So the Gemara says ema aval amagarish. Don't say v'chein. You should read the Mishnah different. You should read it as, however, in a case where he was actually married to Leah and then he divorced her, then you don't even do chalitza. Reish Lakish Kanshana Rebbe. Reish Lakish said, we had this quoted before yesterday, that Rebbe taught achais gerusha midivrei Torah, achais chalitza midivrei seifrim. That the difference here is if he was actually prohibited to the shemeres yavam, if it's prohibited to her midiraisa or midirabanan. If he was married to the sister, then he's prohibited deraisa, and therefore he doesn't even need chalitza. If it was just achais zikukasai, it was just the sister of someone that he was also supposed to do yibaman or chalitzan, so then that's only rabbinic. And then you have to do chalitza. Shemeres yavam shekidesh. We go to this case, this interesting case where Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira steps in and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that we have to tell Levi to wait before he consummates the marriage until the brother does chalitza on Leah. Amar Shmuel halachik Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. We had this before. Shmuel says that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, which means that the zika that Rachel had, that's going on between Levi and Leah is still there, and that needs to be broken before he's able to marry Rachel. Ibaylahu. The yeshiva has a question. Mesa ishtay, Mao biyavamte. It's a very interesting question. Again, the case is that Reuven was married to Leah and he passed away. Now he has brothers, so the brothers have to do yibum or chalitza. At that time, Levi goes ahead and marries Rachel. So we tell him that he has to wait before he consummates the marriage for Shimon to do chalitza or yibum on Leah. At that time, though, his new wife, Levi's new wife, Rachel, passed away. Is he allowed to do yibum on Leah? Is Levi allowed to do yibum? The question is, there was a time where he was prohibited to Leah. Well, of course, when his brother was married to her, he was prohibited to her. But even after his brother passed away, originally he could have married Leah. Could have done yibum to Leah. He decided not to. He decided to marry Rachel. At that time, when he marries Rachel, so Leah is his wife's sister. He can't do yibum on his wife's sister. However, now she passed away. Now you're allowed to marry the sister of the person is allowed to marry the sister of his wife if the wife passed away. So do we say that she becomes permissible now? Or do we say that because there was a moment in time when there was a second prohibition here, not his wife's sister, there was a prohibition of Eishes Ach, it's his brother's wife. He's never allowed to marry his brother's wife unless it's a mitzvah of Yibam. And over here, at the time when it was his wife's sister, there was a prohibition of his brother's wife because there was no mitzvah of Yibam. So do we say that the prohibition of his brother's wife, Eishes Ach, remains? Or do we say that it falls off because his wife passed away and now he's permissible to? Interesting question. So Rav Chanina Damitava Mesa Ishtay Mutter Biyavamte. Rav and Rab Chanina say that it becomes permissible. She becomes back permitted, just like a regular case of Yibam. And Shmuel Varavasi Damitava Mesa Ishtay Asa Biyavamte. Shmuel, it's basically a machlekes Rav and Shmuel, where Shmuel says that it's Aser. Aser Biyavamte. He's not allowed to marry Leah. Amar Rava says, my time of the Rav. What's the reason for Rav that says that he's permissible to marry Leah? There was a moment in time after Reuben passed away that he became prohibited to Leah because he betrothed Rachel. So why does she become back permissible? Gemara says, Mishum Dahavi, this is Rav saying in explaining Rav, Mishum Dahavi Yevamos Shehutra V'Nesra V'Chazar V'Hutra Tachsel Tererishin. This is our rule. A Yevama that was permissible, that became prohibited, that returns to being permissible, goes back to the original permissibility. So over here, when Reuben passed away, Levi could have done Yibam on Leah. It was one of the brothers. And Reuben passed away without children, so it's a regular din of Yibam. Levi was one of the brothers. Then she became prohibited. Why? Because Levi betrothed Rachel, so now he can't marry a woman and her sister. But then Rachel passed away, so Leah goes back to being permissible. Masav Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna asks Rav a question on his pshat. It says, Gimel Achen, Beis Nesuin, Beis Achayis, Vechad Mufne. You have three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Two of them, Reuven and Shimon, are married to Leah and Rachel. Okay. Levi, in this case, is not married to one of those sisters, not the Bilhah and Zilpah. He's Mufne. Mufne, he's open. So, well, Reuven passed away. So Shimon was not eligible to do Yibam because he's married to Leah's sister, Rachel. So the Mufne, Levi, that was open, he does Maimer. Maimer is like a Kedushin for a Yevama. He does Maimer on Leah. Yeah. Doesn't actually do Yibam. It's the beginning of Yibam. Va'achakach meis achiv. Okay. Now Shimon passed away. Now there's Rachel that's there. Achach meis achiv Hasheni. His other brother passed away. Va'achakach meis ishtei. Okay. And now Shimon's wife also passed away. Meisa ishtei achra. Shimon's wife also passed away, Rachel. So Isa Yevama, that woman that's there, which is Leah, chiletzes v'leimus yabemes. He cannot do Yibam on her. He can only do chalitza. Umar says, Vamai, why can't he do Yibam? Now, the simple explanation is that because you can't do if there's two sisters that are waiting for Yibam, each one becomes prohibited because it's achaysik ukasa. It's the sister of the woman that he's supposed to be married to, the sister that he has of someone that he has a bond to, an attachment to. So that's prohibited. Now here also, the Leah that he was going to do Yibam on is the sister of Rachel. Now Rachel had already passed away, but there was a moment in time when he wasn't able to do that Yibam. So Vamai, the Gemara asks, according to Rava, that said, what's the explanation of Rav that we were talking about? If Levi goes ahead and marries Rachel, and then Rachel passed away, is he now permissible to do Yibam on Leah? Then that original case when Reuven's married to Leah and he passed away, and then Levi goes ahead and marries Rachel, and then Rachel passed away. So now can he do Yibam? We said, well, it was permitted originally for him to do Yibam, then it became prohibited when he married Rachel, and now it's back to being permissible. So Rav said that was acceptable. So why over here is it not acceptable? It's the same story. We have Leah was permissible, obviously, he did Maimer on her. Then she becomes prohibited because Shimon passed away. And now Rachel is up for Yibam or Chalitza. That's the sister. It's called the Chesuk Ukasei. So then Leah becomes prohibited. But then Rachel passed away. So then she comes back and becomes permitted. So why don't you say you can do Yibam? That's what Rav said before. Well, Ishtik. Rav was quiet. Rav Hamnun asked a very good question. Rav was quiet. L'basa denafik, after Rav Hamnun left, Amar, he said, Amai leyam amritlei. Why didn't you say to him, talking to himself, Rabbi, why didn't I tell him that Rabbi Lazar, it's the opinion of Rabbi Lazar that you quoted me a brisa, maybe it's a Mishnah, but that should not throw me off that I can't give an answer. That Mishnah was an individual opinion of Rabbi Lazar, and Rav wasn't following that opinion. The Amar that Rabbi Lazar holds, Kivin Shamdal of Shachas Bisr Nesr Lavilamis. Rabbi Lazar's opinion was an interesting opinion. If there's a man married to a woman, then he divorced her. Okay. The brothers are not allowed to marry that woman that was just divorced. Reuven was married to Leah. Shimon and Levi are not allowed to marry Leah, even though she's divorced, because it's the brother's wife, sister-in-law. Then Reuven marries her back. Okay. Then Reuven passed away. Well, you have a regular mitzvah of Yibam. The only problem is, Rebbe Lazar's opinion is that since there was a moment in time, at the time of the divorce, that Shimon and Levi were prohibited to Leah because it's the brother's wife. So even after Reuven passes away and they have a mitzvah of Yibam, she's not permissible. So that's the Rabbi Elazar's opinion here, is that kivan sham the shachas b'isur, because there was one moment that she was prohibited. In our case now, there was one moment when there was a attachment between Levi and Rachel, or so that she's prohibited. He's prohibited to Leah, even if she comes back to being permitted. It's always aser. That's Rabbi Elazar's view. So Hadar Amar. Then he said, you know what? I could have responded that Mishnah that they quoted to me was the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, that Taka holds that it's aser. But how do I know Rabbi Elazar really says that? Because Hadar Eimer the Amar Rabbi Elazar hechad lechazi b'shas nefila, aval hechad lechazi b'shas nefila mi Amar. See, what happened over here is that there's a slight difference. In the case that Rav was talking about, it's perfectly fine. At the time when Reuven passed away, Leah was permitted to Levi. It was only when Levi later married Rachel that she became prohibited. But originally, she was permissible, and Rav holds that Hutra, V'nesra, V'chas v'Hutra, so Chazar Le'Terishin, she goes back to being permissible. In the case that we quoted from the Mishnah, is there were three brothers, two of them married to sisters. Reuven passed away, and Levi was permissible to Leah, which he did Maimer, which is fine. However, then Shimon passed away. Now he can't complete the Yibam because Rachel is there, and Rachel is a Chesed Kukasi. So, however, Rachel then passed away. So that's another example of Hutra, V'nesra. However, the conclusion in that Mishnah was that she remains Aser. You can only do Chalitza now on Leah. So that case has a different conclusion than the case of Rav. That was the question. So what we wanted to say was that case was the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. The problem is that Rabbi Elazar's case was that before Reuven passed away, there was already an original prohibition on Leah because of the divorce. Reuven had divorced Leah, then remarried her. And we said that then Reuven passed away, so she was prohibited from before. So there was never a time of Leah being permissible. Maybe Rabbi Elazar only holds that Leah is prohibited when she was never permitted. Does Rabbi Elazar say that? He said, yeah. Rabbi Elazar says that she would be prohibited even if she was permissible originally. V'hatanya, and the Brisa, it goes like this. Rabbi Elazar says, Mesa Yevamtai, if Leah passed away, we're talking about when Reuven was married to Leah, and Reuven passed away. Now Shimon and Levi are there supposed to do Yibam, but instead of doing Yibam, Levi goes ahead and marries Rachel. That was the case of the Mishnah. Okay, Levi married Rachel. Now Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, wait, don't consummate that marriage because Shimon has to go ahead and do Chalitza or Yibam on Leah before Levi is able to marry Rachel, because Rachel is a Chesed Kukasi. You have to break that Zika. So what happened here is, what happens is Leah passed away. Okay. Now Levi should be able to marry Rachel. Mutter be'ishtay is allowed to marry Rachel. Very good. Mesa ishtay, let's say Rachel passed away. Can he do Yibam on Leah? So he cannot. See what Rebbe Elazar holds, that even though there was a time when he was able to do Yibam, but then it became prohibited, It does not go back to being permitted again. So Rava could have responded to Rav Amnuna that it's the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, and Rabbi Lazar actually holds that that would be the case. Now the Gemara says, oh, if Rabbi Lazar actually holds that once she's prohibited at one moment in time, even though it was originally permissible, it does not go back to being permissible. That was exactly the opinion of Shmuel and Ravasi. In our case, we said, what was the original question? We said that the Ibailahu, if Rachel passed away, is Levi allowed to marry Leah, to do Yibam on Leah? And Shmuel said that he's not. That's exactly the opinion of Rabbi Lazar. Gemara says, I feel Rabbanan. You know what? You don't have to limit Shmuel to only hold like Rabbi Lazar, because there's a machlekes about that case. If Reuven divorced Leah, then he remarried her, where Rabbi Lazar says that he's then prohibited, that Leah cannot get Yibam, only Chalitza, because there was a moment in time when she was prohibited. And the Rabbanan argued. The Rabbanan say, no, you could do Yibam. So you're going to tell me that Shmuel only holds like Rabbi Lazar, but not like the Rabbanan? You don't have to say that. You could say that Shmuel even follows the Rabbanan. Why? That's only because, you see, this case where Reuven divorces Leah, then remarries her, that has nothing to do with Yibam. The whole story of the Rabbanan that argue over there and say that you can do Yibam even though Leah was divorced, that's not talking about when Reuven passed away. That's talking about when Reuven had divorced her earlier and then remarried her. But let's say at the moment Reuven passed away, then we have to look at if Leah is permitted or not. So Shmuel says that the Rabbanan would agree that since after Reuven passed away, there was a moment in time when she was prohibited, so she's going to be prohibited to Levi. So why did they say that she's permissible beforehand? That was because it wasn't at the time of Yibam. That was at the time sometime in middle of that marriage, she was divorced from the brother, but then she was remarried. So when Yibam happened, in other words, according to Shmuel, we're only looking at, is she permitted at the time of Yibam, which is when Reuven passed away. But over here, it was after Reuven passed away that she became prohibited. I feel the Rabbanan might did, and even the Rabbanan would agree that she remains prohibited. Okay, that's Shmuel explaining how he doesn't have to go like Rabbi Lazar only, he can also go like the Rabbanan. Either Rabbanan say that she's permitted and Shmuel says that she's prohibited. That's because the Rabbanan were talking about when Reuven had divorced her before and then remarried her. But the Rabbanan would agree that she's prohibited if she becomes prohibited after Reuven passed away. Okay. And we have a new Mishnah. It says, Hayavama, this woman, this Leah, that Reuven passed away, and she's waiting for Yibam from Shimon and Levi or whoever. She shouldn't do Chalitz or Yibam until she waits 3 months from the passing of Reuven. And the same is with all other women that were in a marriage. Now the marriage is over, either because of divorce or death. They should wait 3 months. The explanation for the 3 months is because we want to know if she's pregnant. Now, by Yibam, it's very significant if she's pregnant, because if she is pregnant, then you're not going to do Yibam, because only if Reuven passes away without children does Leah have Yibam. Otherwise, if there is children, then it's the brother's wife that's prohibited. Eishazach, person's not allowed to marry his brother's wife, his sister-in-law. But if there's no children, then you have the mitzvah of Yibam. Now, what about if it's a regular divorced woman, that she has to wait 3 months? Why? We're going to see in the Gemara why. Okay. Gemara goes on. It says echad besulais, vechad beulais, echad grushis, echad almanis, echad nesuais, vechad arusis. All these possibilities, whether this is a virgin or someone that's already been married, or whether it's a divorcee, whether it's a widow, whether it's someone that was fully married, or whether it was only someone that was betrothed, the same halacha applies. Well, how would she be a basula? That's because she was never married. She was only betrothed. And then she gets divorced from that. She has to wait 3 months. Rabbi Yehuda says, 1 second. Hanesuais, if she was fully married, marriage was consummated, then within 3 months, Yisarsu, she can become betrothed. Not fully married, but betrothed. Va'arusais, and if she was never fully married, she was only betrothed. So then, Yinasu, then within 3 months, she's allowed to get married. Why? Because there's no problem of pregnancy there, because one of those marriages was not consummated. Well, Yehuda says there's an exception. In the area of Yehuda, they would have yichud, the chassan and the kala, even before the nesuin. He would stay by his in-laws. Now, there's different explanations for why they would do that. It could be that they weren't careful with halacha, and it also could be that the decree, like a Roman decree, that there was a general hagmain. That's just a general name for a general, that anyone that was supposed to get married was tibol hagmain tchila, had to live with this general first. So, in order to avoid that, before the wedding, they would actually live together in Yehuda, and that way, when the general would want to take her, she would be they lived together already. He wasn't interested, so that would be protecting her. That's an explanation to explain what they were doing. That's the case. Then, even if there was only Erisin, was only a betrothal, then she should need to, if the chassan passed away, she needs to wait 3 months before she can get married. Why? Because there's a potential that she's pregnant. Rabbi Yossi argues with Rabbi Yehuda in just one point. He agrees with everything Rabbi Yehuda says, but there's one point that he argues. He says, Kol hanashim yisarsu chutz min almana. He says he agrees. He can do Erisin even after a woman's divorced within 3 months. It's because it's only a betrothal. However, if she's a widow, if Reuven passed away, then she cannot do Erisin because she has to wait for because she's in a period of mourning. She has to wait 30 days. Chutz min almana pnei evil, because of the mourning period. Yeah, 30 days of the mourning period. Okay, let's see what the Gemara has to explain in this Mishnah. It starts off with Bishleim Eleitis Yabim Shem Vlad Ben Kayama. We're on top of Mem Aleph on base. We understand when it says not to do Yibam, you have to wait 3 months because maybe there'll be a viable child, and then Shimon was not allowed to do Yibam on Leah, Reuven's wife, because it's Eishazach, it's his brother's wife, and there's no mitzvah of Yibam because there was a child there. Ella leitachla itzamai lemit. Okay, but why can't you do chalitza? Yibam you can't do because it could cause a very serious prohibition. Issachar, marry his sister-in-law, but chalitza, let him do chalitza during the 3 months. There's no prohibition with doing chalitza. She takes off his shoe and spits. There's no prohibition. And then right after the 3 months, she can go get married. She doesn't have to wait for the chalitza after 3 months. She could do the chalitza during the 3 months. The Gemara says, "Leimet havitiv to Rabbi Yochanan." The Amar chalitzas meuberes shmei chalitza. if I would say that chalitza yeah, we had this before. Let me just take a look. It was a machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. If chalitza was performed on a woman that was pregnant, but then the child died, is that chalitza acceptable? Rabbi Yochanan says, yeah. Chalitza, they weren't supposed to do chalitza; they were supposed to wait 3 months. But Rabbi Yochanan says that chalitza was acceptable. And even though now she needs chalitza, but she did chalitza already. Reish Lakish says that chalitza was not acceptable. Now, according to what we're saying now, the chalitza should be acceptable. The chalitza, it should not be acceptable.
We ask if you could please squeegee.
The chalitza should not be acceptable because we're saying they have to wait 3 months. Now, why do you have to wait 3 months for a chalitza? It must be that the chalitza is not acceptable. It must be Reish Lakish is correct. That's why you have to wait. The Gemara says, 1 second. Why are you asking this question here? We already had questions on Rabbi Yochanan and that Gemara before. The Gemara says, we're asking another question on Rabbi Yochanan. Let's say we get an answer to the first question that we had on Daf Lamed Hey. Over here, we'll have another question. And you don't have an answer for this. The Gemara says, life. It's not a question. Let's say that they have that it turns out chalitza was done by Shimon on Leah. He does chalitza. Then it turns out that Leah was really pregnant from Reuven. So that chalitza was not necessary. And Leah is an almana, and she's permitted to marry a kohen. We don't consider her a divorcee from Shimon, because what Shimon did was totally not necessary. Now, if that's the case, then when Leah goes out and she says she's going to marry someone after she's a widow, she wants to marry someone, she finds a kohen to marry. If chalitza was performed, then we have to make an announcement that chalitza was not necessary. You're going to ask, well, there's a child there, so everyone knows the chalitza. Maybe the child passed away, and people don't know that the chalitza wasn't necessary. So Vlad ben Kayama just means that the child survived 30 days. Doesn't mean that the child is still running around. So we're going to need an announcement. So therefore we say, don't do any chalitza, because a lot of people go to the chalitza to watch it. People are going to think, what? A chalutza, Leah, is going to marry a kohen? How could she do that? So we'd have to make an announcement that chalitza was nothing. The Gemara says, v'nitzrucha, so what? Put an ad in the paper that we did a chalitza that wasn't necessary, and she's permitted to marry a kohen, and that's why she's getting married to the Mr. Cohen. The Gemara says, no. How do you know that people are going to hear that announcement? Maybe they're going to be people that are by the chalitza, that aren't by the announcement that the chalitza was nothing, and they're going to say that she can't marry a kohen. Teinach almana. I get what you're saying. You say that a widow has to wait 3 months. Well, it has to do with if she can marry a kohen. But gerusha ma'ikal meimar. Let's say this woman was already a gerusha. From before. And now her husband passed away. So could have been from a different husband. She was divorced. Now her husband passed away. She's never permitted to a kohen from before this marriage because she was a gerusha. So she wants to do chalitza right away. Chalitza right away. What could the problem be? Maybe she's pregnant. and chalitza is not necessary. Okay, well, so what? So there's no sin in doing chalitza. So what are we going to say? Well, it's going to turn out that she's prohibited to a Kohen, and really she's permissible to a Kohen if she was pregnant. Well, she's prohibited to a Kohen anyway because she's a grusha. So doing chalitza now is not going to affect anything. So that's the Gemara's question. If she was a grusha, so she's usher to a Kohen anyway. What's the problem? The Gemara answers, Mishum demafsid lamezainus. What happens by chalitza? You see, a woman that's a widow is supported by the estate of her deceased husband. It's part of the ksuba that she remains supported by his estate. Let's say the brothers need to do yibam on her. So once chalitza is performed, then chalitza or yibam, once yibam's performed, then she's not supported by her deceased husband's estate. She's now supported by her new husband. If chalitza is performed, then she's not supported by her deceased husband anymore either. So what we do is we give her 3 months where we don't do chalitza. That way she could be supported by her husband's estate. And after 3 months, then she could already be married. So the Gemara says, Mishum demafsalam mezainus. We don't want her to lose out on her income. So we don't do chalitza right away. The Gemara says, Teinach nesua. That would only be if the yibam or chalitza is being performed because she was married to Reuven and she gets money. However, arusa, let's say she was only betrothed to Reuven and Reuven passed away. Ugarusha, arusa gerusha. And she was also a divorcee from before. So the reason why she's not doing chalitza is not because she's not going to marry a kohen. She could never marry a kohen anyway. So she can't marry a kohen. And she doesn't get money. So we just took away 2 reasons why chalitza should not be performed. Why don't you do chalitza within 3 months? It's because of what Rabbi Yossi says. The Tanya Rabbi Yossi taught in a brisa. Someone came to Rabbi Yossi and says, "Can I do chalitza within 3 months of the death of the original husband?" Amalei lei tachlitz. Don't do chalitza. Oh well, the tachlitz b'mabakach. What's the big deal? It's taking off a shoe and spitting. It says kara alav mikrazeh. He said this pasuk. Imla yachbaitz. If he doesn't desire to take her as a wife to upkeep the brother's name, that's so that he does chalitza. Ha'im chafetz. But if he does desire, then yibam. Then he does yibam. So kala ila yibam ila chalitza chulu. When does chalitza work? When yibam is also acceptable. And if yibam is not acceptable because it's within 3 months, then chalitza doesn't work either. Rashi points out that you have all the time that we're saying even today, we're learning that there were times that you have to do chalitza, you can't do yibam because there's other types of prohibitions that would happen if you would do yibam. So we said that's because it's impossible. But if it's possible to wait, if it's possible to do both, then you have to do chalitza at a time when it's possible. So that's why you have to wait. Masav Rav Chinana has a question. Hasveikus chaltzis v'leimesiyabmais says that people that have a doubt, you do chalitza, you don't do yibam. Well, the Gemara says, what type of doubt are you talking about? My sveikus. What do you mean? Ilay masafik kedushin. Let's say we weren't sure if the kedushin that Reuven made on Leah was actually a real kedushin. And then Reuven passed away. So it says, well, you don't do yibam, you do chalitza. The Gemara says, so what's the problem? 1 second. We're not sure if Reuven was really married to Leah. So you can't do yibam. Why not? Shimon can marry Leah, Reuven's brother, mimanafshach. Either this is his brother's wife, which he's supposed to do yibam on. The marriage was good, so good, he can marry her. Or let's say the marriage was not good. So Reuven has no connection to Leah, so he can marry her also. So tisyabim ve'makach klum. There's never going to be a prohibition there. Elalav safik shekiddush echas mishtei achayis v'nidei mem kiddush uktani chiletzes. saying like this: Ruvain married Rachel or Leah. We don't know which one. Why? He sent a kedushin with the shliach. Shliach gave it to the shliach or whatever. It ended up that it's a suffix if he's married to Rachel or Leah. Now Reuven passed away, so he can't do yibum. Shimon can't do yibum on Rachel. Well, that's achais. It's either the correct woman or it's the wrong woman. If it's the wrong woman, then it's the sister of the woman that he's supposed to be marrying. He's not supposed to marry her. It's achais kukase. And if it's the other one, then it's the same problem. So over there we say that you do chalitza. We're saying, how can you do chalitza? Maybe we should wait until some witnesses show up. Somehow we should get a proof to find out who Reuven was really married to, and then you do chalitza or yibam, because right now in the situation where we're in now, he can't do yibam. So if you're telling me that when you can't do yibam, you also can't do chalitza, so you should be waiting till this gets clarified. Umar says hachi hashta. 1 second. Hasamim yavay Eliyahu v'yamer dehak yiddish bas chalitza v'yibam. If Eliyahu Navi would tell us, would clarify what's going on, we'd get some sign that this is the woman that was really married. So then we would right away do the chalitza or yibam. We would accept that. You tell me that the Torah is not in heaven, say that's only to create a halacha. But over here, it's just determining what the situation is. That we can accept from Eliyahu Navi. So hacha, but in our case, where you have to wait 3 months, let's say Eliyahu Navi is going to come and say, you know what? I know that this woman Leah is not pregnant from Reuven. Would we do chalitza right away or yibam right away? We would anyways wait 3 months. I'll prove it to you. A young girl that her husband passed away. She's definitely not pregnant. She can't conceive. Nevertheless, we wait 3 months. That means that even if Eliyahu Navi is going to come, we're not going to accept that. We're going to nevertheless wait 3 months. So therefore, chalitza is not acceptable, because for yibam we would have to wait 3 months. Let's go further. Tana Rabbana was taught in the Brayse Yevama. The first 3 months after her husband passed away, she takes her sustenance, her money for food. She supports herself from her deceased husband's estate. But after 3 months, she's not supported from the husband. She's not supported from the yavam. Why? Because the husband the deceased husband's estate doesn't support her once she already has an attachment to the yavam, which that takes place after the 3 months. Amad Badinu Barach. Let's say she goes to Bezdin. The yavam is called to Bezdin. He doesn't come. He runs away. Yeah. Why is he running away? I don't know. He doesn't want to do the mitzvah, and maybe he had to run away for other reasons. I don't know. Nizainis Mishal Yavam. The Bezdin takes the money from the Yavam's estate. It's his obligation at that point to support her. Nafal Lifnei Yavam Katan. What happens if the Yavam is a child? He can't do Yibam until he's 13. She's not being supported by her husband. She's not being supported by the Yavam. Miyavam lesla mibal mai. Can she continue to take support from her husband, from the deceased estate? Well, pligi bar Rabacha v'Ravina. It's a machlekes. Chada merisla v'chada melesla. One says yes, one says no. Behilchas lesla. It says the halacha is that she doesn't get support from her husband. Mishmaya kansua. Somehow this is a punishment from heaven, that she's in such a terrible situation. She doesn't get support from him. She doesn't get support from him. Yeah, what did she do wrong that she deserves that? It doesn't explain. But she's in a fix. I saw it written that even though the Gemara seems to paskin like this, but some of the Goyim paskin that she still gets support from the husband. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, starting in the Brayse Yevama shecholtza la'achem b'teich shleisha. The brothers did chalitza You know what? Let's leave it over here so we don't rush through it. Let's leave it at the Tanur Rabbana. Okay.
Okay, thank you
Okay,
very
everyone.
much.
Thank
Have a
you very
wonderful day.
much. Thank you.
Have a good day. It's lacha.